Hi, good afternoon. It's Meredith from Backyard Caring in the Guelph Tool Library. We'll wait for a couple people to maybe join us. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to show you. I want to mess up how I speak with my mouth, clearly. I got like an eyelash stuck backwards in my eye last night and was too tired to like deal with it, so I just feel weirdly sore in my eye, but we're trying a slightly different angle in my house here so that we don't get that crazy glare that was in the last video. Behind me is a kind of plant stand grow light thing that I created. I'm really excited to start some seedlings very soon, including some lettuce and microgreens that we're going to check out next week and talk about. If you're interested in sprouts, microgreens, indoor greens, lettuce, things like that to tide you over for the rest of winter, check out next week at 3 p.m. on Wednesday, and I'll be talking about that. I'm going to start off by opening up some mail that I got, and I'm really excited about it because I haven't opened it yet. I did cut the top so I could kind of easily get in here, but I ordered some seeds from a company that I really like in New Mexico, and they always include extras. Like, maybe they will, I don't know. I've been ordering probably for like 10 years. Oh, they definitely sent some extras. Okay, so the company is called J&L Gardens. This is like an insider scoop. They're a very small company. I love them. I wish them the best. I hope they get big, but I also like that they're very small and exclusive. So there's that. I ordered some beans from this company. However, I think this year a lot of companies cannot send beans over the border. So I got that money returned and did not get my lovely Birdsong Mountain Gem dry beans, but I did get a tomato called Boathouse. For those of you who live in Guelph, you will be familiar with the Boathouse, which for me is like about a 5-minute walk away, so it's kind of neat to have a tomato named Boathouse. I have some Ink and Gold husk tomatoes, so kind of like tomatillo. I have some neon peach tomatoes and some green rippers. Usually these do not have pictures. Oh, they do have pictures. Yay! And then what did they send as an extra? Okay, so as an extra free sample, I got some Bosque Bronze Cherry tomatoes. Let's see if you guys can see that. It looks like they're kind of an orangey brown small tomato. Honestly, I like everything from these people. They always test the flavor, and that's a good sign of a really good seed company is when they actually test the flavor. We're gonna get to grow lights in just a minute. This is just a little, interlude before we start that. And then they had a little bit of foam, and then they packaged up all the seeds just like this. So here's the Boathouse. It's a larger slicing tomato with kind of a deep pink and then some green kind of natural striping. The Ink and Gold husk tomatoes, I guess they're called a husk tomato, but they're kind of like tomatillos to me. They look like that. They are yellow, and then the husk kind of dries up at the top, and then the fruit itself grows beyond the husk. These neon peach tomatoes. I wonder if I should turn this a little bit for some better light. Some neon husk tomatoes. These tomatoes actually have a bit of a fuzz around the outside, and they're a really great color, so I'm really excited. And then I love novelty plants. It's a problem for me, but these green rippers are pointy little saladette tomatoes with kind of green and red striping, really exotic looking. I love a difference in texture. Every single one of these have a different shape and utility. So yeah, those are some of the new things I'm going to be growing this year, and those are all the way from J&L Gardens in New Mexico. So yeah, exciting. I also wanted to point out, if you follow along with the live streams, we did some houseplant kind of upkeep and trimming, and I've had them underneath the grow lights for about 3 weeks now. One in particular was a really gnarly looking calancho, and look at it now. It even has, doesn't want to quite focus, it even has some kind of red edging and some red tips on the new foliage, and that is a really good sign that the light is doing wonders for it. It's nice and compact, it's not too leggy, it looks super happy. I'm tempted to kind of chop some of these off and then start them fresh, because some of the old plant, you can kind of see in there, is like a very old stalk and kind of gnarly looking. There's a lot of new little growth. Again, it doesn't like focusing on the front camera, but you can see right there, there's some growth, new little growth right at the edges. It's just like so happy. Like, look at that. Robust. And then at the end of a lot of these, there's a really good one on the edge here. Where did you go? Where was the good example? Right there. You can see like the roots are just coming off that bit. So I think what I'm gonna do is, like, for example, trim right there. We also did some cuttings right here. We also did some cuttings of that same plant, and that worked really well. So what I'm gonna be doing is the same as we did to this, but there's all these new roots on this guy, kind of wet. It's just been in some water, and that is ready to go into some soil, maybe some smaller pots, and then they could be used in the garden later this year. This piece, if I can take it out gently, actually has a flower on it. Super cute. Doesn't really have a ton of roots where I want them. It has some roots up higher. Might leave that in the water a little bit longer. And then we have some Trades Candia here that unfortunately took a tumble, and I had to do some necessary pruning. And look at that. In about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, we've got enough root to put that in some soil and kind of restart this plant and save it. So yeah, very exciting. This one, they're kind of all weird angles, but this is a really good sign. Again, tons of roots, really excited about that. Around the same time, super easy. If you have a spider plant, you will know that if you do the same thing to a spider plant, holy moly, and with the added grow light that they're under, they're just thriving. So I've got a bunch of baby spider plants with some incredibly healthy roots. There's some kind of old stuff I can just peel off there, but yeah, really excited. They're ready to go into some soil and they will take off. This plant is actually doing amazing. This is just one piece. I don't know why, but the screen keeps dimming for me. I would like it to stay on so I can see what I'm doing. But this one has grown a ton. This is just one pup. A pup is what usually a lot of plants that propagate like this is what you call them. You call them a pup. So this guy's doing really happy. I'm gonna put these into some soil, I think, pretty soon. Yeah, that's some kind of updates with some of the plants that live under my grow lights. I personally have converted 100% over to LED, so I have a bit of a bias, but I want to talk briefly about all of the types of lights that are accessible and available. Oh, and before I forget, I have a pin of my face on, something I use when I'm working with the backyard caring or other things, because we have a new initiative at the Guelph Tool Library called Pin a Smile On. And the whole point is that when you have your mask on, if you're a volunteer, you can apply through us and get a free pin of your face. So if you're doing your work, and it's just nicer to see that smile, and recognize who you are when you have a mask on. If you're a daycare worker, working with seniors, things like that, might be something you're looking into. If you're not a volunteer, you can still order one for $2 from us at the Guelph Tool Library. So check us out if you're interested in that. Yeah, so moving forward, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about with grow lights. And the first thing is, like, what do you need a grow light for? Do you really like houseplants and you think, I think it'd be nice to give some supplemental light to my succulents, especially plants that are full sun, tend to get a little sad in the winter, a lot like this plant, which is a full sun plant, like most calancho. Hold on. It just keeps going dark and I can't see. Yeah, they tend to suffer a little bit in the winter months, especially in the longer part of the year. We're kind of past that now. The days are getting longer finally. But they really benefit from additional light. And then we have some more rehab plants, like also a couple posts ago we talked about this African violet. You can still see some of the damage on these outer leaves, but since being under the grow light, I have an incredibly dense set of new leaves. Like almost like you can't even peel them apart. There's like so many starting in the middle there. Really tight formation, not leggy at all like these leaves. So once that gets a little bit bigger, I'll eventually remove these more gnarly leaves. But since there's some green and they're still feeding back to the plant, we don't want to remove those and, take away any nutrients. So under grow lights, you can really achieve those outdoor conditions, those summer lighting conditions that are really difficult, at least in Canada, during those really really cold, sad, dry, not dry, but dry inside months. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the time that's a big reason for people. You want to give some supplemental light to your houseplants. The other reason would be maybe you want to try indoor gardening. I'm not talking about starting your seedlings, and I'm not talking about, you know, those tropical plants. I'm talking about people who want to grow tomatoes. Maybe you want to grow some lettuce, or peppers, or start your peppers super early. A lot of people love to do that. You're going to need a very specific light for that. In terms of houseplants, you really just need a closer light. I actually just realized I forgot I was going to show you one thing, so let me just grab it real quick. Never mind, wasn't in the drawer I wanted, but you can actually do this DIY. It's going to save you some money. You don't need the fanciest grow lights for indoor houseplants. It's just supplemental light, especially if you still have them by a window. If you want to keep plants in like a basement or out of the direct sunlight, you might need an extra light. So it's really important that you kind of look at your situation and what your needs are. You can get grow lights. Hi, welcome to the live stream, everybody. I'm glad you guys can join me at 3 p.m. It's been kind of an interesting thing to see, like if it would be a good thing to start at 3 p.m. I just like it because there's lots of light and I can show you things in the daylight and not use overhead lights and artificial light where I'm showing you beautiful indoor plants and things. So yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining at 3 p.m. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about anything, I'm watching and I can see your comments, so I'll try to answer them. And it really does add to the live stream, and questions that other people might have watching this later or actually watching who are a little too shy. I love it. I love hearing from you guys. So yeah, when it comes to supplemental light for your tropicals, things like cactus, succulents, even some palms, they require a lot of light. So you may want to have a lamp over top. I've seen grow light just bulbs that you can put in a regular lamp if you want to fit it with your decor. You can also get regular LED kind of strips from the dollar store, things like that. They're not full brightness, but there's something extra, especially when the days are so short. So you can string these together, you know, and layer them together and create your own grow lights. The top of my grow system here, there's just a small piece of wood with a channel in it where I have added an LED grow light strip. It's actually not an actual grow light strip. It's just an LED strip. And I'm going to talk about how to find the right LEDs that are DIY regardless. So you'll see a couple things with LEDs, and one of them is called PAR value. And this is like the wavelengths of light that range from like 400 to 700, and that has to do with photosynthesis. So the higher the PAR value of the LEDs, the more likely you'll have better results as like an artificial sun. Low PAR is usually used for like under cabinet lighting, you know, under your feet at like the movie theater. I mean, obviously LEDs have like a very diverse use in the world, but the brighter they are, the more like real artificial sunlight they actually are. So yeah, PAR or AR stands for photosynthetic like active radiation. So the higher it is, the more likely it's going to be your fake sun. When I had a saltwater aquarium, I had like PAR 750s or 650s over top of my coral. And that was plenty enough. Coral are very high demand and very specific about the lighting that they require and that the color temperature that they require. And so you're going to be paying quite a bit of money for those products. If you're not ready to invest in that, there are a lot of other options. DIY is fine. And I encourage people to try them. If you just want to try it to do microgreens, a bit of lettuce, it works. But then we get into a little bit more complicated territory when it comes to the color temperature of light. So if you're going to use non-LED, so fluorescent, regular LED bulbs, you're going to see something called the K value. I thought I had a package that had the K value on it so I could show you, but often when you're buying light bulbs just for your home, you'll see like a K value with like a little scale from like a yellow to a white to a blue, and that's the color temperature. And the higher the K value, usually the more blue it is, and that is going to be closer to actual sunlight. So when you're looking for non-grow lights, you want to get as high as possible in K value. When I was looking for LED strips, like the one I used above, it has a K value of 7,000. So that is actually above your average household use LED light. So it worked really handy. If you can find bulbs that are 7,000 or 7,500, that is essentially a grow light. However, it's not full spectrum. So like I said, when things get a little more complicated is when you want to actually grow flowering fruit indoors. Obviously, people who grow cannabis or want to grow their indoor peppers and tomatoes have to be looking at this, because if you don't have full spectrum, you're lacking pieces that will actually make the plant go into the processes you want. So you need, a lot of times too, you can actually adjust grow lights for these different periods. So at first, and why a lot of DIY lights work really well for seedlings, is that you're only going to be under those lights for a limited amount of time. You're only going to have those seedlings under there, you know, a couple of weeks before you're putting them outside, and they're going to have natural sunlight and be on their way. So those are going to be also very close to the surface of your plants. Anything of lesser value, if your K value is like 2,000, more like a warm, soft light, which maybe is nicer for inside the home, you're going to get very leggy, weak plants that are struggling. They're going to be constantly reaching up. I'm like making the time lapse of like a seedling with my hand there, but you're going to have very leggy plants, and it's hard for those plants to adjust to moving outside, and they're also very weak. You can, you know, sometimes people, if you water leggy seedlings, they just flop over and break. So what you want, a lot like this African violet, you want everything tight, 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 compact, low. Sometimes you have to add a fan because that agitation helps the plants get a little stronger, especially with peppers and tomatoes that are going to be under lights for a little bit longer than other things. But you want that really dense stuff. So you want the light not only to be close, but you need it to be a high enough K value. Pre-made grow lights, I'm going to take you over to this light in a second. I'll kind of explain more about full spectrum. So let's take a look. Yeah, so we fixed up a lot of these guys on the live stream, and they're just kind of hanging out here. But as you can see, this is a store-bought light, and I feel like I'm giving them free promo, but this is a grow light by, I'm forgetting, Hydro Farm. You can get them at Canadian Tire, and I recently discovered that TSC, Tractor Supply Store in Guelph, now named PV Mart. If you have a hard time finding it, maybe their like website is PV Mart now, but they actually have them on sale for about $135. They come with these little adjustable stands, so if you don't have anywhere to hang it, or you don't want to and you want to put it away, I'm going to be using mine year-round with grow lights, with seedlings, growing veggies. So mine are actually secured at the very top. I have one separated, and I'll bring it out in a second, but they have a little notch here that you can put a hook in, like I have right here, attached it to an O, and then a hook above. So there's some flexibility. I can actually unhook this and get it to go closer, so that if I actually start seedlings, which would only be a tray about this high, I can actually lower this light all the way down for when they're starting out. Now, this is called full spectrum because we have white LEDs, we have red LEDs, and blue. So red and blue are necessary for the flowering stage and the fruiting stage. The white will handle the vegetative state just fine. So when you're talking about those DIY lights, white is just fine because you are just growing the green part of the little plants that you want to start. For a lot of house plants, these guys have also gone a little red because they're super happy with the amount of light they're getting. And they've really bounced back. I thought I was going to kind of lose some of these guys. They still look a little weird, but I'm really happy with it. Yeah, so if you're starting your own seedlings, what you really need is just white light for a temporary period of time, and you can sustain that for quite a while. But then in order for the plant to actually develop flowers and buds and then fruit, you need that red and blue. So sometimes, in certain cases, depending on the application, you're going to want to get a pre-made grow light. Or at least, you can. Technically, all of these are soldered together underneath, and I have seen projects where people solder the lights themselves. I'm going to attach some more here eventually, but this one isn't connected. But as you can see, actually, let me bring you back to me for a second, and I'll pick up one that I detached and kind of go into more details. So all LEDs have to be attached to like a heat sink at the back. It's kind of like I don't know how to explain it, like a ground essentially, so they're working efficiently. So really, you can kind of see from the back, if I took this apart, you'd be able to see, it's like a strange reflection on there, you'd be able to see that these are all soldered together and in order, and that there's a slightly different look for the LEDs. They all have little names actually that say which one is which, so that when you flip it over, you can determine which one needs a repair. A lot of the time, what happens is certain individuals, maybe just the red, just the blue, will go out on these. There is a warranty. If you buy one of these, the warranty is 2 to 3 years, I believe, which is pretty good. And there, I've actually been in conversations with this company because I want to find an alternative port for power for these, and they don't exist. It's arbitrary, so they have their own so that only theirs fits inside, and it's kind of annoying because I want to extend the wire all the way up here without having to move my really bulky like power bar anywhere closer. I have a rabbit who's a house rabbit, so she has free range. So I'm very strategic about where things are connected, where they're attached to, so that she is unable to eat them. But at the same time, it makes for a really seamless look in my house, and I keep things really tidy. So win, lose, lose, win. Win-win. Yeah, so there's some information on here that isn't really important. It doesn't really give us any info on the par value. I'm gonna go get the box, actually. I have that pretty close. We'll see if there's anything I can kind of tell you about. Okay, this is the box that it came in. And if they don't even say like what lumens it actually is, which is, again, refers to the brightness, the K value, but I can guarantee they work. Honestly, very affordable. There's some other companies, like you can find them on Amazon. They're going to be about $165. So like I said, if you want to get them from TSC/PV Mart, it's the way to go. Yeah, this actually doesn't say too much. I mean, it's really for like user-friendly. People aren't like really digging into the details of this, but I like to know. I believe online it does state the lifespan is about 25,000 hours, which is pretty good. Kind of lines up with that 2 to 3 years. I'd be lucky. I've already had some for 2 years now, and they're totally fine. They look totally normal, no issues. In the past, I have had square panels kind of like this. They were about like this size, maybe a little bit bigger square. And they were mostly blue and pink, well, blue and red, which kind of make this pink glow. Those are very affordable on Amazon. They're pretty good for succulents, tropical plants, a little bit wary seedlings. Sometimes stuff grows a little bit weird under them, I find, but a lot of those Amazon grow lights, they really only last for a couple years, and sometimes they're super expensive. Another example I have, someone donated this to the Guelph Tool Library, and it needs a repair, and we might do something with it in the future. It's very heavy, but it's more of an industrial style LED. It's very heavy. Ugh. It's actually very heavy. I think this alone is probably 20 pounds. But we can see it's very similar. They've actually added, you can kind of see that they're kind of round, and we've got silver, so we've got a bit more reflection going on. Each one of the LEDs has a little domed cap on it, which is just to distribute the actual light better. There's a combination of full spectrum on here, so we've got blue, red, orange, and white. And you can adjust them using these switches at the back. There's a fan because this many powerful full par LEDs create a fair amount of heat in terms of like the fan and operation, not so much to touch on this side, but the actual just operation of the electricity going into this. They're still very efficient. It's got a fan on the sides. This will be a little bit noisy. These lights from this company, the Root Farm, I don't know why I said Hydro Farm. They also Hydro Farm makes their own lights, but this Root Farm light makes absolutely no noise. Not even a hum, not even a buzz. I've had those pink lights. They kind of make like a weird buzz that I can hear. And if I'm working in silence, it's like, oh, like I can't handle it. So this is not something that you want to have in a living space. This is something that you would put aside in a greenhouse, in a shed, in a workshop, in a basement, or in a spare room where it's not going to be distracting you with the fan noise. And also incredibly bright. You can hang these a little bit higher and get a little bit more distribution. You can grow full-on tomatoes, full-on cannabis plants, peppers, eggplants, full sun plants, any vegetables that you really would like under this kind of light. A little bit dirty, needs a little bit of a makeover, but something kind of interesting. And a lot of people, give these away when some of the lights give out. And all we have to do is take it apart and resolder some of the lights. You can actually buy individual LEDs on Amazon, eBay, with really high par value. So if you have a dream to create a fish-shaped grow light yourself, you can do it because you can solder them together in whatever shape, construction, length that you want. All I know is if I wanted, I have about 8 feet of distance in this shelf. And if I had a 8-foot grow light made, it would cost thousands of dollars, whereas these are only about $150 each. What's great is I can kind of turn them on and off different times. I can kind of do different things under each one. I can raise and lower the level of 3 different individual grow lights. So it just gives me a little bit more flexibility. Not a huge fan. I wish they were like white. I know that they come in black, gray, not so bad. It is what it is. But I've seen on Amazon all sorts of colors. When it comes to fluorescent lights, making your own grow light out of a shop light, again, you can totally do that. They're quite heavy. You do have to kind of reinforce where that's going. You can't just, when you buy this, do traditional fluorescent light. They take more than LEDs. I think it's better. Halogen, if you've ever heard of halogen, they're pretty much exclusively used in like the agricultural settings now, very specific projects. They are very bright to look at. They are very expensive still, but halogens are equally as good as LEDs, but they get very hot to touch and they take a ton of power. The middle ground is the fluorescent light. What's great about fluorescent lights in some ways is they're very cheap. It might cost you a little bit more. If you're going to be running lights year round like me, I think the investment of LEDs is really good. If you're going to be bringing them out every winter to put on top of your tropical plants and start your seedlings, again, I would still encourage people to do LEDs. But fluorescents are really great because they're cheap. You can find shop lights almost everywhere. They are, like I said, a little bit heavy. So if you want to set up a temporary grow station with a fluorescent light, you're going to have to create some way, some kind of stand, something to support that light and be able to change the level. You can get ones that have simply 1 bar, 2. You can get fluorescent lights that are specifically made for growing vegetables, for growing greens, and that you'll actually find that the K value is much, much higher. So more like daylight or grow light value. So they're going to be up there more like 7,000, 8,000 K or Kelvin value. And what's great about them, I wouldn't use those for like supplemental light on top of your plants. It's just very bulky and heavy. If you ever have an accident with one of those, I have had this happen where I thought it'd be okay to stack them on bricks above some seedling trays. Thankfully, they still had some dome covers, but it came and like crushed on one side. They're very heavy. You can use shop lights that you find, like you can buy at Home Depot. I'm not talking about the actual like holder, but the actual tubes you can buy. Just look for the super high K value. The higher the K value, the brighter it actually is and the better it is for your plants. You can also get tubes that have LEDs in them. I find that the K value on some of them isn't as good, but they do have some that are for people who invested in grow lights that are all fluorescents. You can get the LED equivalent. You can also order from things like Solar, like there's a bunch of brands like Solar Can, and a couple of websites like for, I see them like in the reptile market as well, things like that. But you can actually get fluorescent lights that are designed for growing. They do recommend you change them every 3 years, so you're kind of maybe on the same level. They do actually fade out year to year. I had a shop light with very high K value, I think 7,500 K value tubes. They worked for the first 2 years, and then I noticed I had to get a little bit tighter, in order for those seedlings to stay tight. The other thing to consider is that, especially if you're doing seedlings, is a lot of the grow trays are kind of this standard size. I think it's like 1 foot by 2 foot. I could be wrong, but you know what I mean. The traditional grow light or the seedling starting trays. This is exactly that size. Actually, you can actually fit kind of a little bit more. So I know that when I put one of those underneath here, it's evenly distributed. If you decide to get a fluorescent tube and you only have one along the middle, everything growing, so say like the tray is facing you like this and it's lengthwise like this, and the tube is down the middle, everything leans in or is leaning up towards that light. And again, you really want to avoid that legginess because they're very vulnerable. I have had them, it's happened to me before when I've been like experimenting on my own, doing, I think one year I got those fluorescents that you put underneath the countertop and just push on with a button. They were super cheap. I found them somewhere for $5. I didn't even know what K value was. It worked at first. I'm like, oh wow, it's really working. I had them inside this little greenhouse thing. They didn't like being very moist. But ultimately they made for some very leggy seedlings because they weren't very strong. So once they kind of got past that first or tertiary step where they're starting to grow, secondary and tertiary leaves, they started to get quite leggy, and it's really a waste. So I think it's important. You can do whatever you want, just really focus on that K value, and that par value will tell you kind of what's going to work. I didn't want to go on for super long. A lot of these have been like 45 minutes. And I know that's a lot of length for people to watch back. If you have any questions about LED lights, grow lights, ask them below. I don't recommend incandescent bulbs. They obviously don't distribute enough temperature. They're very similar to halogen. Again, halogen gets extremely hot. So if you have pets, if you have kids, or you forget, and you're just like, I need to adjust the bulb, and you touch it with your finger, it will burn your finger off. You'll get like a piece of skin peeled off. I have done it. At the same time, they're a very warm light. I've been to a couple shops. There's a shop in Cambridge that does, they do a lot of hydroponics. They might be like Hydroponics Cambridge or something. They have a bunch of halogen lights, and you really just need one for a small space. So there's kind of pluses and negatives. Again, I really like the LEDs. They don't really make any kind of blip on my hydro bill. The light is very pleasant. It's not too crazy. Even if you get the pink ones, I think it's quite warm. I've been noticing when I've been walking my dog around the neighborhood, I can tell which houses have the like blue and red grow lights because I can see them through the windows and maybe on top of some plants. It just depends on what you like. If you can afford it and you want to invest in your seedling operation or towards your plants or whatever, I definitely recommend trying to find a full spectrum light because that'll allow you the most flexibility in terms of, hey, I want to try some mini tomatoes. I have a couple tomato varieties that only grow about 2 inches tall, and I'm tempted to try some. I'm going to start some lettuce and some microgreens for next week, and they're going to thrive under these lights. So just something to consider. I'm still going to use my fluorescent light for some stuff closer to the end of the season before I can put things out. Like I'll probably put a bunch of flowers under there. I'm going to keep it super close, probably like that much space to start. And as they get a little bigger, I'm going to try to make that distance just so there's some room. But you really need, like, they call them T8s. 4 in a row is the only thing that actually covers when you have a seed tray that's like this big. If you don't have enough coverage, they definitely lean out. And if you put it near a window, they'll lean towards the window instead of the LED light. And that's a really big indicator for quality. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything in terms of grow lights. There's a lot of good websites out there. There's a lot of options on Amazon. There's a lot of options from kind of local retailers here that are bigger box stores, but still you can kind of take a look at it first. Yeah. My rabbit just did a really cute thing. A little yawn and stretch. Yeah, she's so exciting. But yeah, so the other thing I wanted to point out too, like I think someone asked me why like I have this like multicolor up there. I was able to find an LED light that had RGB plus white. So it actually has two colors of white plus RGB. So I kind of rotate it between white, which is actually on this strip 7,000, or I think, yeah, at least 7,000. And then I'm able to switch between that red and that blue to kind of, you know, give them that full spectrum on kind of a scheduled diet, if it were. So yeah, I think we covered a lot, and I have a super sore eye, and I think it looks fine, but you know, I think I said this earlier, I like flipped a little eyelash inverted overnight, and I like, yeah, just like stings. It's weird. Yeah. So next week, just a reminder, 3 p.m., we are going to be talking about growing microgreens, and I think people have been also asking about sprouts, so we might as well talk about that and the difference. And then growing lettuce inside. I always see at the grocery store those heads of like Boston lettuce or living lettuce that still have the root ball attached, and with something like this you can easily grow 3 or 4, maybe 5 at a time of your own, and I think each of those are almost $3. So you know, if you put these to work, they can really pay. We talk about the microgreens. We're going to be talking about how to design and plan for your garden. So yeah, stay tuned and keep joining us every week. Look forward to seeing you guys. Bye.